Hey gang, Ronan here. As you can see in this game, I am playing the Tier 6 European Special Cruiser, the Elli, or AE. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to call it the Elli. I'll start by saying I had a grandbaby visit last week, and the grandbaby, he showed up here sick, kind of cold or something, which is not unusual for babies. And of course, with grandbabies, you want to be close to them and hold them, etc. So at least once and probably multiple times, he coughed and or sneezed directly in my face and or mouth. So I have picked up the cold that he had. So I may sound a little bit different, and I may periodically turn off the mic so that I can cough and or sneeze. So the Ellie, you may have noticed that this was a part of the what I call turn in all your spare resources event that culminated with the opportunity to pick up a ridiculous torpedo cruiser, which shall remain nameless, at least for the time being. But there are two ships in that event that I think are really good. One of them is the Tier 10 Defense, which is a really nice cruiser, and the other is the Francesco Ferruccio, which is a really fun to play Italian cruiser at Tier 7. And prior to getting either one of these, and before you have the opportunity to pick up the Kitakami, which I know I said I wasn't going to name, but I did, there is the Elli. And this ship, this is, I think, for most people going to be a little more than a port queen. The ship is almost entirely ineffective, in my opinion. It's not really what I would consider competitive. There are so many better Tier 6 cruisers than this one. Let me, while you see the completely uninspiring play here, read for you what the World of Warships wiki says about the ship. Cruiser Eugenio di Savoia was laid down at the Ansaldo shipyard in Genoa in July 1933 and commissioned in January 1936. The cruiser is noted for participating in the blockade of the Spanish Republic and circumnavigating the world. During World War II, the ship actively engaged in military operations in the Mediterranean, including the Battle of Calabria and attacks on Maltese convoys. At the end of 1942, the cruiser was damaged by American aircraft. After the surrender of Italy, she was used as a training ship. In 1951, Eugenio di Savoia was transferred to Greece, where, under the name of Elli, she became the flagship of the Royal Hellenic Navy and the headquarters of the Commander-in-Chief of Hellenic Fleet. From 1952 through 1958, the cruiser was used for making official visits by the King of Greece. Elli was first released on 13 December 2023 as the reward for the 8th stage of Update 12.11's Salvage for Victory event. So that's what they say. Now, why am I positioned here? Because this thing is made of glass, like most Tier 6 light cruisers in the game. And this was either the first or one of the first games that I played in the ship. And there's actually only one more that I think I'm going to show you. Which, you know, I played, I think, reasonably well. But these guns are they're just terrible. Okay, so what can I tell you about the game? These are 152s. The reload time on the guns is 8 seconds. And you'll see here that trying to do damage with them is it's challenging. So you've got, at range 14, you've got almost 10 seconds, or at least over 9 seconds, for the shells to get there. This version is decent, but not great, and so you get 3 penetrations there for 1,500 damage. You can see that these are a little more than pop guns. Okay, so back to the stats. Firing range base 16.53 kilometers, which is decent. And you would think, well, I could make use of those, but as you'll see in this game, the damage output is pretty pathetic. 14 shell hits for 6,600 damage. It's, well, pathetic comes to mind. Maximum HE shell damage is 2,100, but you're going to very rarely see that happen. Most of the time, now you can see I've got a New Orleans here, and I'm landing some shells, but that was like, what, 650 per shell, something like that. That's just a bad shot. Okay, so initial HE shell velocity, 950 meters per second. I was actually pretty excited about it when I saw that. I thought, well, these will be nice. But it appears to me, and maybe to you too, that the initial shell velocity drops really fast, and the drop time on these shells is horrible. So they just don't weigh anything. So despite the great initial shell velocity, they seem to take forever to get there, and then they don't do much when they finally arrive.
Torpedoes, dead ahead.
The HE shell weight is only 44.3 kilograms, which, if you've been paying attention in the game at all and using the wiki, etc., that's just a really light shell. Maximum AP shell damage is 3,200, but you're very rarely going to get an opportunity to use that, because if you get close enough for your AP to pen anything, you are more than likely going to get blapped out of existence before you ever get off a good broadside shot on anything. The initial AP shell velocity is 1,000 meters per second, which seems, outstanding. But again, if you get close enough to make use of the AP, I would say maybe 50-50 chance you're going to be destroyed before you ever get that shot off. This thing is just so squishy. All right, so secondary is really literally nothing to talk about there. Torpedo tubes. You've got 2 triple racks of torpedoes, and they've got a range of 6 kilometers. So in kind of along the same lines, if you get close enough to use the torpedoes, you're probably already in serious trouble. Now, that's not to say you'll never get an opportunity to use them, because maybe you will around islands, but most of the time you're going to want to stay so far away that the torpedoes are not going to be something that are going to be a regular part of your gameplay. Now, I don't know, if you've been playing this a long time. I don't know how many long-time players are playing much at Tier 6 anyway. And maybe this just serves as a decent trainer if you're just looking for a special and or premium ship to use as a trainer. But I think I would rather, I'll put it this way, you can see the Königsberg there. I would much rather play the Königsberg at Tier 5 than play the Elli at Tier 6. I think the Königsberg is a much better ship to play. And I think, again, if you've been playing any time, you know how squishy the Königsberg is. Well, this thing is at least as squishy as the Königsberg, but the guns are much, much worse. My opinion, your mileage may vary. Max speed is 37.7 knots with a turning circle radius of 710 meters, which is, while not horrible, it's not great either. Rudder shift time, 8.4 seconds base, and surface detectability range, 11.7 kilometers. That's brutal for a ship this squishy.
Torpedoes, direct front.
Air detectability range is 6.67 kilometers. So if you've got a CV in the game, they're going to often make sure that you get taken out of the game pretty early, either by their own aircraft or by spotting you for the red team. And anybody that's paying attention sees a Tier 6 light cruiser out moving around, spotted by aircraft. You're almost certainly going to see pretty much everybody put shots on you. Now, I was really hoping the Königsberg here, and no offense to Ocean Wires playing the Königsberg, I was really hoping with his hydro he was going to help me box this DD in up here. You can see on the mini map where the radio location indicator is a little highlighted pie-shaped section on the mini map surrounding my ship, and as it's moving, of course, crossing west now. But instead, he moved to I don't know. I don't know why he didn't help, but it all worked out. I mean, we had this game pretty well in hand at this point anyway. I'm going to get some shots on this destroyer, and
torpedoes, direct front.
It will serve as further example of what I'm talking about. I mean, you got to put a lot of shells on the destroyer to finish it off. That's Yudachi. Now you do have, you're putting out 4 shots in the front of your ship, which is nice. You can stay angled, but you can see there, very little damage even with 3 pens. 347 damage on a destroyer with your HE. Yeah, it's terrible. Did manage to get a fire, which of course he put out right away, and I'm still visible. My expectation is he's going to cross that way. Yep, he did. And he's trying to circle back around. He was hoping I would just follow him in the same line that I had been. And
Torpedoes, direct
he
front.
doesn't have to catch me. But if you're unfamiliar with the radio
Torpedoes, dead
location
ahead.
skill, this is all part of why I think it's so great. I mean, there are a lot of reasons, but one of them is you can see a DD that's doing that. Okay, 1,549. I did catch him with 3 shells and managed to finish him off, but you saw how many shells I put on that destroyer in order to finish him off, and he was by no means healthy when I ran into him. Turning around takes a little while, and, this game, while, you might look at it and say, well, if we're just looking at the left side of the screen there, well, you killed 2 ships, the Fiji killed 2 ships. You had a pretty good... No, I really didn't. Granted, I was playing very cautiously because, when I looked at the armor on this thing, it looks a little like a destroyer with a citadel. And I wanted to make sure I didn't get blapped early because I wanted a chance to really see what it could do. But these guns, again, I can't say it enough, really, really horrible. There are so many other Tier 6 cruisers that you could play that I think are just so much more fun. And I'm gonna give you some examples right now. I mean, we've got a little bit of time here. So let's take a look at cruisers. I'm just pulling this up on the other computer here. Okay, so from the Aoba, definitely just so much better than this thing. Granted, Aoba has bigger guns, etc., but same tier. In the UK line, Leander, Devonshire, I'd rather take either one of those, or the London, or the Dido for that matter, than this thing. France, the La Galissonière, I think is a much better, by leaps and bounds, much better. And then, of course, the Premium de Grasse is, I think, a pretty good cruiser, really. The Russians, really, I'd rather play the Kotovsky or Kirov than this thing. But at Tier 6, Budyonny, this thing, it doesn't even compare. Budyonny this reminded me of playing a Tier 4 cruiser, honestly. In the US line, at Tier 6, you've got Pensacola, which has phenomenal guns, and Dallas, which just does a lot of Daka, but I think is a little bit more effective. Granted, the shell arcs are totally different, but I'm putting a lot of hits on things, and I got 17,000 damage. That's 50 shell hits plus now. 18,755 damage. I know if you're using your resources to pick up these other ships in the event, you're going to get this thing anyway. But for those who maybe aren't going to be doing that and are at some point going to be looking at the possibility of picking up a special and or premium like cruiser, this is definitely not one I would recommend. In the German line, Nuremberg completely outclasses this thing, and of course with the German line, you've got the much improved AP pen. So Nuremberg, despite, at least in my opinion, Nuremberg being a kite away and use your range either to burn things down or to smash with AP, is just much more effective than this thing. In the Pan-Asian line, you've got the Ramat, pretty decent guns by comparison to this thing. Spanish line, basically all of them. The Baleares, or the Premium or Special Canarias. I know that this is a lot of examples of things that are better, which is essentially any other Tier 6. And it bothers me that I didn't really have anything good to say about this. I think, and you've heard me say this before if you've been following my videos at all, I think Wargaming kind of at some point stopped making the same effort toward balance that they once did. And it seems, based on things that I've read and heard or seen on videos, that maybe Wargaming kind of, there's no gentle way to say it, quit paying attention to what their community contributors and testers were saying and started looking for other people who would tell them what they wanted to hear, and balance really suffered as a result. So I've complained a lot about ships being overpowered or new gimmicks being overpowered. The idea being that, maybe wargaming is introducing a problem and then a little bit down the road offering a solution to that problem they introduced if you're willing to pay for it. There is another side to that coin. I just don't get the opportunity to talk about it very often, and that's putting a ship in the game that is so underpowered that it is kind of painful to play. And to me, that describes this ship very well. I think that's probably enough to say about this thing. This game's almost over. If you manage to survive all the way to the end of this thing without getting bored and going somewhere else, I much appreciate it. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you would consider liking and subscribing. I'm going to take just a minute, and we'll go through the after-game stats just to kind of emphasize the points that I was making. 85 shell hits, 22,000 damage. Yeah, 3 kills, but I was just cleaning up. Team score, you can see where I'm at. Really meh. Our Shiratsu played a really good game. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. 328 shells fired. You'd think you'd maybe be able to do a little bit better than 21,000 damage. My hit percentage, maybe you think that's good, maybe you think that's bad. Whatever it is, 85 shells for less than 22k damage. Pretty awful. Thanks again. I appreciate you joining me here. I'll see you next time.